What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today I want to discuss some of the day 2 usage rates and some of the adaptations and surprises that we saw from some of these Pokemon within the Swiss rounds, right, which just ended. And as I say this, Top Cut is about to start, so I just wanted to strictly say that this is all from day 2 Swiss rounds. All right. That being said, again, here's the usage data. So pretty much Flutter Mane still remains at number 1, and now that we see Urshifu and Ironhands trade places, it's also interesting to note that right now they are tied in terms of day 2 usage rates, but it's specifically the Rapid Strike over here that you see is tied with the Ironhands, whereas Single Strike has also cracked the top 12 over here. This used to be Ursuluna from day 1, but now it is actually the Single Strike Urshifu making an appearance within the World Championships, and for good reason, right? And we'll discuss that in a bit, but just to go down in terms of the placements here. So again, like we said, Flutter Mane, Urshifu / Ironhands, and then after that, it's pretty much the same here, with Chien-Pao, Amungus, and Tornadus. I believe the Tornadus dropped down to 6th here, whereas it was 4th in day 1, but Amungus and Chien-Pao are relatively the same, more or less. Landorus, Rillaboom, and Heatran, yes, that's relatively the same. I believe Rillaboom actually moved up within the standings here, and then you have Goldengo, and then Chiyu, of course, rounding out the remaining up until the top 12 here. So what do we notice here? Basically, well, Single Strike Urshifu is the first thing I want to talk about here. So again, we mentioned yesterday about this close combat, this Swords Dance set with the safety goggles from the Rapid Strike Urshifu, right? That was one of the key things that we saw from day 1, and now in day 2, not only do we still see that, but now we also see the Single Strike Urshifu making an appearance. And you just have to understand, well, why is Single Strike so good, and why is it entering high usage data within the day 2 worlds? Well, just because of Wicked Blow against Cresselia, right? That's also very, very strong. Imagine Tera Ghost options, something like Chien-Pao or Tornadus. The Single Strike Urshifu does relatively well against that. And then, like I said, you still have close combat pressure, something against like Chiyu, great against Heatran for that matter. And then at the same time, your Wicked Blow is still also very, very good against something like Goldengo. And then even the Flutter Mane sometimes, right? Just depending on their Tera matchup. But Single Strike, again, you just need like some breaker against the Cresselia, right? Because sometimes they just leave Fake Out, and then they're just able to get up their Trick Room. But now you just have a Single Strike Urshifu, and at the same time you can just put so much pressure immediately, as opposed to the Rapid Strike, which is just like the water damage, right? So that's one thing I wanted to note, and it's cool to see that the Single Strike Urshifu makes an appearance. It didn't really get that much play, in these online tours leading up to the World Championships, but now that we've seen it enter play, it's super interesting, and it's really nice to see that both Urshifus are within the top 12, at least within the Swiss rounds top cut. All right, then moving forward, Ironhands. The one cool thing about Ironhands that it has been using is actually its Tera type, moveset aside. So normally you would see something like Tera Grass, just to help you get around Amungus. But now the premier, I don't know if I would say it's premier, but one of the more common Tera types that Ironhands have been using is actually Tera type Water. And Water is just an overall good defensive Tera, right? It basically still removes your weaknesses to Fairy, and it removes your weaknesses to Ground at the same time. And now you're neutral to that. And then Water's weaknesses just aren't really all that common. Yes, you are weak to like an opposing Ironhands, but that's really it in terms of like all the electric damage coming out. Yes, you are susceptible to like Rillaboom, of course, Woodhammer, but it's a bit of a trade-off, and it's still more favorable to just have this better defensive Tera typing, over something like the grass stuff, which makes you weak to something like a Heatran or like flying moves from like Tornadus, and for that matter, right? So that was interesting to see, within day 2 Swiss. All right. And Chien-Pao here, like we discussed yesterday, they're adamant now. They're running Crunch. Some of them also have Haze. That's for the Dondozo matchup. So that was also cool to see. But again, the whole idea with adamant Chien-Pao is you can afford to go slower, but harder hitting, just because a lot of these Flutter Manes like we mentioned, they're also built to be a little bit slower, a little bit more bulkier, because they want to be able to live certain hits, from the Chen Pao sucker punches and the ice spinners. So they're able to go adamant. And back to the Flutter Mane here, there was so many like tech choices and moves. So I really wanted to like really pinpoint it on that Flutter Mane. First of all, yes, you did also see like Tera water Flutter Mane, and again, that's also like to resist against the Urshifu's rapid strike stuff, right? Because Fairy was a very, very popular Tera type, and it still is, right? But now you've also seen this adaptation where you can go Tera water and then resist the surging strikes Urshifu. But not only that, but there was also the Rocky Helmet item that was being used in the early Swiss rounds. And Tera water Rocky Helmet is just so smart, just because again, against surging strikes Urshifu, as it goes into the Flutter Mane, it's taking big chip damage against this Rocky Helmet. So that was actually really, really cool to see. And then in terms of like tech choices, we saw Icy Wind Flutter Mane. That was also really nice, for speed control, and that helps into like the hyper offensive Tailwind mirrors, right? Because while they're going for Tailwind, you can kind of stagger that and just go for your Icy Wind, and then next turn potentially go for your own Tailwind on your own Tornadus. So that was also cool. Then we also saw something like Trick Room. Trick Room Flutter Mane was also quite the play there, which is really great if you have like a slower team just in general, or really good against the hyper offensive teams. Turns that they would go for Tailwind, you can go for Trick Room, and we saw that on stream, right? So that was also really cool to see. And then that just makes something like if you had an Amungus or a Torkoal on your team, or even like the Ursuluna on your team, just be able to go first after that Trick Room was set up. So that was also really, really nice to see. In terms of the Flutter Mane adaptations, right? And then another cool tech that was also seen was Hex on the Flutter Mane. So this was run by Joe. By Joe I mean Joe UX9, right? He was running basically Thunderous, right? Where the Thunderous was a Prankster Thunderous, and it has stuff like Thunder Wave. And what you're able to do now is just get this status condition on them, this paralysis, and then the Flutter Mane is just able to go for Hex. And if you don't know what Hex does, of course, the power doubles if you have that status ailment, right? So now this base power 65 move is now actually 130, which is a lot harder hitting than a Shadow Ball, right? You just have to make sure you connect on your Thunder Waves, right? But it's look at this actually, 90%, that's pretty good, I would say. So in that sense, that was also another really cool tech choice to see. And you might even see some more people use this, right? This Flutter Mane Thunderous Landorus combination. I expect this to be prevalent a little bit more at post Worlds within that last month of Regulation D. I think this is a really, really good trio. So this is something that you should be expected to see moving forward, even after World Championships are done. And then going from here, again, like we said, water was still good. Water was so good, but Fairy is still also pretty good, right? I don't want to dismiss the Fairy Tera, because this is still really good against like Chen Pao Sucker Punch, right? This is what lets you live it. Joe showed that on stream. The Tera Fairy option. If you really need to live that dark move from the Chen Pao, then Tera Fairy is still a very, very good Tera type overall to just use on the Flutter Mane. So that was also really, really cool to see. Then as you just move forward here, I want to go back to Amungus in a second, but the Tornadus. So if we look at Tornadus, from what we've seen, and this is expected, right? These Tornaduses are made to be built rather bulky. You might even just see some I don't know their spreads, right? But just by going a bold nature Tornadus with like either like almost max HP, something like this, and then just from here, just hitting maybe some kind of benchmark, I would say 132. Yeah, maybe even just something like this. This is what lets you live stuff like Dragonite E-Speed shenanigans, or even like a Chen Pao Ice Spinner for that matter. Even with like your Tera Ghost, you're still able to like survive this, and you don't even have to burn your Tera Ghost to be able to live a boosted Dragonite, E-Speed from the Chen Pao, right? So they're made to be like relatively bulky in this sense, right? I don't even know like what kind of set they would run here, but you can even just drop this right to like something maybe like along this route, right? Let's go 156, and then just put some investment in SpDef, something like this, right? And then from here, you can just do something like air. They were also using like Air Slash Tornadoes with like Sunny Day, which is really good, right? In terms of having a Sun team with like Flutter Mane, for example, because now what you're able to do is, first of all, you're the Urshifus are doing less damage because the sun is out, so that means the Flutter Mane doesn't get KO'd, and then at the same time you activate the Flutter Mane's photosynthesis. So this is like another cool kind of way to use sun in a sense, right? And, you know, you don't have to just only rely on like Torkoal stuff, where now the Tornadus, they're able to just go for like these bulky, you know, Air Slash Sunny Day Tailwind sets, and then, you know, you can just go for like Taunt as a last slot here. But Air Slash, of course, you know, it's just a more accurate move. You know, Bleak Wind Storm is just too risky sometimes for some of these players to run in the World Championship. So, you know, unless they're running Rain, then they're not going to be running, you know, Bleak Wind Storm. They're just going to just go for Sunny Day and then just go for the Air Slash move over there. And then you get a chance for flinch, right? So it all works out. We did see this on stream a little bit, so this is also cool to see. But that's the idea, right? You click Sunny Day, the Flutter Mane gets enabled, and then the opposing Urshifu just does less damage, right? And then at the same time, you might even see something like the Chi over here, which also definitely benefits from the Sunny Day, and also benefits from Tailwind. So now you're just able to outspeed pretty much everything, and then just do so much more damage with something like Heat Wave, or even something like an Overheat for that matter, right? So it's really cool to see. And then at the same time, you know, Beads of Ruin just helps your Tornadus do more damage, right? Because even though you sacrifice your special attack for more bulk, but if you're paired with a Chi, you're going to be doing more damage anyway. So, you know, this is also a cool 3 in order to like try and build around. You know, I've seen like some Dondozo cores utilize these 3 to perfection. So the Tornadus was also very, very nice to see in this sense. All right. The Amungus, like I said, you know, if we go back here in the usage data, the Amungus here is still within the, of course, this top 5 here. There were some interesting sets there. Well, I wouldn't say like interesting. Like these are like moves that have been used before. It's just like, oh wow, we're actually really seeing it now in the World Championships. You're still getting Rage Powder, you're still getting Spore, of course, but some interesting moves, of course. Leaf Storm, which is really good. You know, just a little bit more of an aggressive grass move against the Urshifu, which, you know, they don't really run so much special defense, or it's actually weaker than their physical defense. So having Leaf Storm, you know, with Rocky Helmet, you know, Amungus is just, you know, you're gonna deal that chip damage, right, and bring their Urshifu down to like pretty much half, and then you just finish them off with something like a Leaf Storm, right, and that just picks up. So that's also a pretty cool tech choice to see. But then we also saw something like Sludge Bomb here, right? And this was like, I remember this maybe back in like Sword and Shield, where this is actually pretty good against like, you know, other grass types. And it's also pretty good against like Tera Fairy options, right? The Flutter Mane is going for like Tera Fairies. So Sludge Bomb is also really, really good. Even like things, you know, this is also really good into Ironhands, right? Because if you just think about the common Tera type, you know, for Ironhands, which is grass Tera, you know, if they weren't going for water, Sludge Bomb does so much damage into Tera Grass Ironhands, right? Because look at this Spinef. Even with this like Assault Vest, you know, Sludge Bomb, it's stab, right? It's a stab move, so it's gonna do like a pretty good amount of chip damage, you know, whereas like Pollen Puff is just not really cutting it. So sometimes you'll just see some of these Amunguses just go for Sludge Bomb into these Tera Grass options, like a Tera Grass Ironhands, or even like a Tera Fairy Flutter Mane for that matter. So that was, you know, a really, really cool adaptation to see. And it just makes sense overall, right? You know, you just consider the meta, like what are their common Teras, and then you just put in a tech move there that can do well against it. So Sludge Bomb, Amungus, and Leaf Storm were really, really good against, you know, Urshifu, Ironhands, and of course the Flutter Mane. And this is also really good into like, you know, Heatran for that matter. Like if you just consider Heatran, like a lot of Heatrans are Tera Grass, right? So then now all of a sudden, they don't have that steel typing anymore, so Sludge Bomb is going to be doing like super effective damage against it, and then you have the Tera Water to help you against that Heatran matchup as well. So that was also really cool to see. And then moving forward, speaking of Heatran, one really cool tech that we saw, you know, on stream was Magma Storm. So Magma Storm, you know, you have to hit it. The accuracy is not so great, 75%. I think on stream we saw it like miss a couple times, but I know some players were using this. Like Magma Storm, if it connects, it just does so much, right? And it really punishes the opponent because it traps them and it's damaging them for all these turns. It's almost like, you know, those, you know, Whirlpool Sand Tomb ideas, you know, but Magma Storm just does so much. You just have to make sure you connect with it. But Heatran, you know, using this adaptation was actually really, really cool. And it was really interesting to see. All right. And then as we move forward here, what else was actually really cool? Oh, Rillaboom. Oh, okay. So this is actually, we just saw this actually. So Rillaboom, okay, along with these Dondozo teams, right? What was actually really cool to see in terms of a tech move, it was Worry Seed, right? I saw this, you know, that they used this on their own Dondozo, and then the opponent wanted to put Dondozo to sleep, but then the Rillaboom just clicked Worry Seed on its own Dondozo, and now the Dondozo doesn't get slept by Amungus, and the Dondozo can just pretty much just do whatever it wants. And if you don't know what Worry Seed does, is the target's ability becomes Insomnia, and if you don't know what Insomnia does, right? Oh, I can't even like click it here, but I guess I can. But the idea is that you just don't get slept. So, you know, you could even have like a rest set, you know, and then you just don't go to sleep. So that was actually a really, really cool trick to use for the Dondozo there. But, you know, Rillaboom was just overall, again, we discussed it in the previous video, but like Fake Out, you know, Wood Hammer, U-turn, and usually this last move here is either like Stomping Tantrum or Knockoff. Stomping Tantrum, the ground tech, is actually very helpful against, you know, opposing Heatrans. It's good against Ironhands. It's good against Goldango, you know, even good against Chiyu for that matter. And it just has so much good coverage all around that it's always, you know, very much appreciated to see in terms of like a tech choice here on the Rillaboom here with the Assault Vest, of course, you know, allowing it to take a lot of these special attacks. But then we already know what Goldango can do, especially with like the choice specs. Trick Shenanigans does so much damage. Even Choice Scarf was still like pretty good. And then from here, oh, what actually dropped out, and what's actually also really good here is the Ursuluna sets. Now Ursuluna, of course, you either saw something like either Earthquake or you either saw Headlong Rush. It really just depended on, you know, what kind of Ursuluna set they were. You know, in terms of the rest of the team, you know, did they have enough flying / levitate mods to utilize Earthquake, or was it just simply Cresselia, right? But one thing that we did see besides Facade plus, you know, some ground move, that's not Facade, was this move here. It was either Bulk Up, which could really deter against like Intimidate stuff, and then at the same time you get like defense boosts, so that also helps you against something like, you know, Chen-Pao Ice Spinner, even against Urshifu close combat shenanigans if you didn't have the option to go for Tera Ghost. But at the same time, you can just pretty much neutralize and Intimidate by just going for Bulk Up, but you can also punish it by going for Swords Dance, which is something that we also saw in some Ursulunas. So instead of going to -1, now you're just a +1, and you can really catch opponents off guard, because if you can catch them switching or protecting on opportunistic turns, then you can just click Swords Dance, for example, on like maybe a potential last turn of Trick Room, right? So Bulk Up Ursuluna / Swords Dance was also really good, and it was really nice to see, just overall and in general in that sense. Okay, now that we've talked about like, you know, popular usage stats and, you know, adaptations, I believe this is where I want to transition and end the video here. This is what I believe to be the best 5 so far in the World Championships, right? This core of like Ironhands, Amungus, Landorus is really strong, especially like when something like this is like Choice Scarf Landorus. And then from here, of course, the Ironhands can be, you know, pretty much whatever Ironhand set you have. But this last slot here could be a lot of different things depending on how you want to run the squad. Like for me, it was Galarian Moltres. That was the team that we used and showcased in July, and this is the team that won a lot of, well, it won one tour, almost won a second tour, and then top cut a bunch of tours. But, you know, I have at least one friend using this in the Day 2 World Championships, and he's doing relatively well. And then his also another partner, which I can't reveal his name yet, you'll find out eventually. His is also using the same 6, but is also using a, you know, a different EV spread, you know, in that sense, right? But Moltres aside, we'll talk more about Moltres in another video, because again, it just made J2 Worlds, this exact 6 that we created, so I'm super proud about that. But minus this, this is the key 5. A lot of Japanese players are also using this, and then there's, I believe, some Italian players are using this kind of 5 as well. But to me, in my opinion, this has been the best 5 within not just the World Championships, but I believe in the Regulation D format. Like that is, you know, simply my opinion, but in terms of like success, this is the premier 5, and you can slap on, you know, anything in this slot really, but I just chose Moltres at the time because I wanted to build around Moltres. But in terms of this 5, to me, this is, again, like I said, is the best one. in terms of a core 5 Pokemon. Let me know what you think so far of the World Championships, you know, especially day 2 Swiss rounds. I know Top Cut is still happening as I record this video. I have it on my second screen over here, so I'll be keeping my eye on that. But in terms of Swiss rounds, let me know what you think of those adaptations that we measured. How about this placement in terms of overall Pokemon? And you know, some surprises that you saw that maybe we didn't get to mention. You know, let me know what you think of that. We did see Brangleghast, you know, on stream. Articuno unfortunately has been dropped, so you know, that's a little bit sad to see. I would have loved to see Articuno in day 2, but in terms of the usage stats, let me know what you think, and we'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.